This week, Emmet and I continue our discussion of Jack Kirby's Eternals, looking at issues 5 through 8. This book is wacky in a way that the MCU movie just wasn't. As always, a reminder that you can support the podcast by pledging a few bucks a month at patreon.com/deconcomics. At $4 a month, you can hear our monthly podcast on Jim Starlin's Captain Marvel run. Or if you'd rather give a one-time donation, you can do so via PayPal by sending it to mail@deconstructingcomics.com. We appreciate your support. This is Tim.
And this is Emmet.
And this is Deconstructing Comics. Welcome to Deconstructing Comics. This is Tim in Tokyo with Emmet in country Victoria, Australia. Good day, mate.
Good day. Good day, mate. It is a cold, wet, and miserable day today, so right, I'm very happy to be talking to you about war in New York with aliens and space gods and iffy race science.
Right, yeah, it's winter for you right now.
It is.
So I wanted to start out here. We got a comment from Daryl Grant, who writes, I never understood the MCU's motivation for doing an Eternals movie. The Eternals have never been popular with the reading public. It was never a hot property or a fan favorite comic. There never really was anything like a fan-driven campaign to get an Eternals movie made, was there? If there was, I missed it. Every Eternals series got canceled early on. Why spend millions of bucks making a movie about a comic that never had a hit run? Perhaps they thought they could do what they did with Iron Man or Blade, take a B-list property and make it a surprise cinematic hit. The only thing about the Eternals is that it attracted writers like Neil Gaiman who loved the concept but couldn't make it popular. It was always the writers who loved the idea of the Eternals, but fans never really embraced the title. And yeah, I think I kind of wondered that too. I mean, for all the Marvel comics I've read, I'd never read a book about the Eternals until we started covering it for the podcast here. And so I went into the movie like, I know Jack Kirby and I don't know, to see what happens. So I couldn't even recognize like which characters they'd changed the genders of or the cultural backgrounds of. I've been looking into that a little bit recently. I'm like, oh, okay. So this was used to be a guy, and they changed it to a woman in the movie. But also, I think in terms of like Iron Man, in terms of for comics fans, Iron Man was very well recognized, much more than the Eternals are, and so and also it's just one guy. So I think it's a lot easier to do something with that or with Blade than this group, which I'm starting to wonder, the problem that I had with the movie, that there were just too many characters, might also be true of the comic.
Right. Okay. Well, I will counter yourself and Dale with the example of Guardians of the Galaxy. Okay?
Right. Also not well known. Also, I've never read a Guardians of the Galaxy comic either.
Well, see, this is the thing I had. The version of the characters that I read were the completely different cast of characters because that was the book set in the 31st century. And this era that we're talking about in Marvel, the 70s, is when those characters were introduced. And they're completely different characters from the ones we meet in the movies. There's like cameos of some of those characters in the movies, but the actual concept was completely different. And I think the advantage of Guardians of the Galaxy is the same advantage that I think Marvel wanted to use with the premise of an Eternals movie, which is it's a blank slate. It's effectively you are using the IP. These are existing characters, but you can pretty much tell whatever story you want because there's no actual audience investment in them. So that's the swing and a miss.
So
that happened here.
So the thing that Daryl is pointing out is actually a feature, not a bug, or was thought to be anyway.
I think so. I think it was an opportunity. It was a potential opportunity. And unfortunately, it didn't work out. I think I still see people saying, actually, I like the Eternals. I do not understand those people. I don't understand what you're saying. It's like I'm like the kids in Peanuts. What? But I always appreciated the idea of doing an Eternals movie. I was like, yeah, obviously. You got your Van Daniken stuff. You got your Stargate, which came out 20 years before. It was reasonably popular. You almost 20 years. No, it was 20. My goodness, it's longer. 25 years. I'm old, Tim.
Join the club.
I can absolutely see a project like this working. The problem wasn't the characters. The problem wasn't the premise. The problem was it was bloody dour, miserable movie, and it was too long. That was the problem.
Yeah, the length was an issue. Yes,
but yeah, I think it's unfortunate that Eternals has this sort of reception now of being the bad Marvel movie, because even with the Kirby comics that we're talking about, I mean, he's more or less returning to the ideas he had since Thor. What happens if humanity's legends of gods are actually space aliens, which is something he keeps returning to. And New Gods was the second.
Or not so much space aliens as people who existed here all the time who are not humans, who are something more than humans, and we just didn't realize it. So on the point of the movie being dour, I was noticing reading, so for this episode, we're reading issues 5 through 8. This story, I mean, dour is not a word that describes it at all. It's kind of wacky and kind of humorous and very imaginative. And of course, it's Kirby, so over the top. And, I wish that the movie had some more of those characteristics.
The second character to speak in this first issue says, "That's funky corn." So, that's what we're dealing with here. Kirby's not dour. That's the thing. And then even the recent Eternals book that I recommended to you, the Kieran Gillen, Esad Ribic series, I thought that had its moments of levity as well. And it was serious. It was a murder investigation involving gods. But I also thought there were moments of whimsy in there. And I agree that Neil Gaiman's Eternals didn't work because I don't know if anyone's noticed Neil Gaiman's comics work. the pressure was off him from the 2000s onwards. It's like, yeah, whatever. Let's just get through.
It'll sell.
It'll be fine. 1602. Yeah, why not, Neil? Go ahead. Oh, goodness, that book. I gave 1602 to somebody once, and they came to me afterwards, and they were like, "What was the point?" I was like, "I don't know."
I guess that's why I didn't buy it. Like, what's the point?
Yeah, it's like, yeah, I know, it's weird.
Also, as I was reading these, I was thinking, and by the way, we're in 1976 here reading these. So Kirby calls entirely on Judeo-Christian tradition and Greek gods in his kind of history. And it would have been nice if he could have mixed in some other traditions.
Well, the Aztec tradition's in there too.
Well, it's true. That's true. Yeah. The Aztec. But we haven't yet seen any East Asian. I think it might be coming. I realized this morning looking into it that the character of Kingo, who was an Indian in the movie, is Japanese in the comic. What?
Japanese. Yeah.
Kingo sounds a lot more Indian than it does Japanese.
That's interesting, yeah. And I think he's he's sort of a ninja archetype, isn't he?
Of course.
He's yeah. Okay. Yeah.
It's comics. Japanese are all ninjas.
Well, this is again. Look, I will eventually stop complaining about the movie, but one of the reasons why I want to see the movie was we got a glimpse of a Bollywood dance number, and I was like, yes, I am here for this. This is going to be great. Let's go. And then you watch the movie, and it's like the end of the routine, and it's cut short because the characters arrive on set, and that's the end of that. And I was like, oh no, I wanted a full dance routine, the whole thing.
Yeah, you wanted the Bollywood version of the Eternals.
I wanted at least 10 minutes. 5 to 10 minutes, full production. Let's go. You know? Oh, God.
You wanted to see Angelina Jolie sing and dance, right?
I absolutely did. I absolutely did. I wanted her in a shari dancing in a circle. Yes, please.
All right. Well, so I can't even remember where we left off in issue 4, but we'd seen the big celestial standing there in the Aztec place, and
Arishem.
And Arishem. In 50 years, they'll have judged if the Earth is good enough to keep going or not. Was Kirby anticipating a 50-year run for this comic? I don't know where the 50 years came from.
Well, the 50 says 1977, so it's now. It's 2022.
Right, yeah. So yeah, I think we might be wiped off the map by the Celestials pretty soon.
Yeah. I think he was anticipating the early 21st century, yeah.
So we start out with Sersi talking through her mirror-ish device with Makari.
Yes, exciting Zoom call action. That's what this is.
And Margot is like, it functions like a TV set. And Makari, that name has a familiar ring. And so, I mean, as is the bit with the Eternals, all their names have been garbled over time, and we call him Mercury.
I have to say, sorry, just before we proceed, there is something ironic about us commenting on this page where she's talking to a mirror. And there's this conversation of, oh, you're oversimplifying the facts, my dear. But the analogy will do, you know, it's been compared to a TV set. And we, in turn, are talking about this in this way. You and I, right now, are staring at a screen, talking about two characters talking to a screen. And in this comic, that's a miracle. And for us, it's just our everyday reality. There is just something, it's just worth pausing and reflecting on that for a moment.
Right. Yeah, we have to remember Margot's never seen anything like this before, and we very definitely have. And we're doing it right now. Yeah, well, and especially after the pandemic, this is more and more the case with meetings and work and so forth, as well as podcast recording. So New York is still aflame, and we can see out their window. And then while they're talking with Makari, a bunch of green deviant guys come in and kidnap them.
So these aren't deviants; these are mutates.
Mutates. Okay, what's the difference? I haven't quite grasped.
I think they're like a slave race that the deviants have engineered, and I think this really confused some later X-Men writers, because they got into their heads that mutants and mutates and deviants are all part of some sort of same family tree. So this is what I'm talking about, like the iffy race science. Let's not touch on this, Tim. This is going to set off a whole thing. We don't need to get into it. But I do enjoy the moment of this green scaly figure coming through the window, just as Margot is saying, they look like devils and scaly demons. Oh, and it's like we're watching a pantomime. It's like, they're behind you. Oh, look behind you.
Yeah, and Makari does that, but he's too late.
Yeah. Yes, Makari's helpless to watch Sersi and Margot get kidnapped by these creatures, you know.
Now, one thing I think we still haven't seen in real life in 2024 is the shape of Makari's screen. It ain't square at all.
Yeah, it's very funky 70s mirror, you know. It's got some interesting curls and corners. Yeah.
So now he's heading off to talk to the Prime One because he needs to go and rescue Sersi and Margot. We'll see the Prime One in a few pages. Now, where they are is Olympia, and not in the state of Washington, but I guess it's what humans called Olympus, because this is all Greek god stuff here. And he talks to Domo, who is, to us, Metron.
Yeah, it's very Metron-like, yeah.
Although I was also kind of reminded of Professor X, another Kirby creation, because I feel like there was a time when rather than a wheelchair, he might have had a floating box too. I can't quite remember.
He did, and he did in the cartoon as well, and that's the version of the character that a lot of people know. And in the Doctor Strange movie that came out not that long ago, they sort of made reference, specifically referring the animated series version of Xavier with the floating chair. Yeah.
Okay. Now, in my sort of research or memory refreshing about the movie, I'd forgotten Domo was just the name of their ship in the movie. They dispensed with the character.
Is he AI or something? Is that the idea?
I guess. Maybe it's like what they did with Jarvis. Jarvis became AI in the Iron Man movies rather than a British butler.
Get rid of all the butlers. Can't have manservants on screen anymore. It's so passé.
And Makari wants to talk to the big guy, and he's saying because the deviants are active, and Domo doesn't believe him. It's like the deviants haven't been active forever. Just come up with a more realistic reason for wanting to see him.
It's funny because we've just witnessed him race through Olympia to get to this chamber to raise the alert. And everyone in passing comments on, "Oh, would you just slow down? Stop being so hectic.
Slow down. You move too fast."
Literally. Join me in meditation. It hasn't got the same ring to it. Simon and Garfunkel wouldn't have made a song about that. But there is a sense of they're just all blissed out. Like they're all just in a really comfortable situation, all these Eternals. They're just like, time means nothing to them. They've been around for a long time. Things have settled. And Makari is just harshing their buzz, man. And he comes to raise the alarm, and there's this sense of, no, what are you talking about? That hasn't happened in ages, So I was just slightly entertained by him being, I think this is not the first time he's cried wolf. I get the impression that he's just,
again.
Yeah. And because it's his nature to be fast, he's just constantly moving. I think he's just probably someone unpleasant for the rest of them to be around.
So we leave him there and we go back to New York where the attack is continuing. And now, are these also mutates, these guys flying around?
Yeah, so I don't want to get too bogged down into mutates and deviants, because Makari did refer to them a moment ago as deviants, but then later on they are referred to as mutates. So my guess is that they're sort of like a lower order of the deviant species. They seem uniform as well. They're all green-skinned. And we've seen already that the deviants tend to, because the whole point of them is that they're randomly evolving. There's these different versions of them, different versions of the species. So hence the connection with mutants. So I'm not going to get too fussy about the defining what is what, because I think fans listening will probably have the definition to hand. I don't. But I do find it interesting that Core's idea of defining them as space devils, is really powerful, and it's something that inspires fear. And what I find amusing about it, I will get to it when we actually get to Core's scene, but what I find amusing about it is that this is Kirby making fun of this idea of a satanic panic. Only a couple of years before the satanic panic came back in a big way. But he's probably thinking of European scaremongering affecting towns and villages maybe a century beforehand. This is where this is the memory he's pulling. But now we look at this and we go, oh yeah, that happened in our lifetime. That's something that happened recently.
Backmasking on records.
That's happening right now. There's another version of it again happening. But yeah, I just thought it was amusing.
So the cops are shooting at them. That's probably not going to accomplish anything. And Sersi and Margot are brought to Crow, and he's getting kind of rough with her, and so she turns his hand into a tree branch. And she only changes it back because Margot's life is threatened if she doesn't cooperate. So she changes it back. But then, they get on this flying ship and go, well, it's flying, and then they go under the ocean. So there's multiple ways it can move around. Now then we have a scene of a red robot and a blue robot fighting, and no, Kirby did not invent Rock'em Sock'em robots.
Yeah, okay, I wasn't going to say it. I wasn't going to say it.
The Rock'em Sock'em robots, I looked it up. They go back to 1964, so...
Okay, we're good. We're okay, folks. We're okay. Put down the pitchforks.
This is still in Olympia. We're back in Olympia, and Makari has found Athena. So known to humans as Athena, I assume.
Athena.
Yeah.
And it's interesting that there's sort of this friendly rivalry and competition between Athena and Zoros here. Because in the Greek myth, because Athena is considered the goddess of wisdom, the myths state that Zeus gave birth to Athena through, like, she was an idea and she erupted from his skull. Like, they had to cut open his skull so she could come free. So, wisdom has to come from men. Like, she couldn't be born of Hera or any of Zeus's other lovers. He had to give birth to her because wisdom has to be patrilineal, So I've always found it interesting that however that story evolved, because Athena being associated with wisdom probably predates that version of the story of her birth, but I find it interesting that somebody had to insist, no, Zeus gave birth to her. It's always stuck with me.
Okay. And so Makari is telling her the deviants are back and they've captured Sersi. And so they've got to see the big guy, and that is Zuras. So, of course, he's Zeus, but...
Yeah, Zuras was there the entire time because he was playing the game with her.
Okay, we just hadn't seen him on panel, right? We saw his hand there.
Yes, so he was operating the blue robot, and she was operating the red robot.
Okay.
So it was the contest. That's why I told that long rambling digression about Zeus and Athena, because they're sort of here. They're presented as like friendly rivals. They're clearly competing with one another.
Okay. And we get this full page of Zuras's face and his very red hair and red eyebrows and beard. Yeah. I was kind of surprised at this panel. It's so big and really in your face.
Well, it's funny because the next issue, there's a passing reference to the red-headed one.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody mentions, and there was that other one. He was red-headed. The other Eternal. As it clearly is referencing Zoros. But I think it's interesting that that's his defining feature. Yeah, he's a real ginger.
Makari fills them in on what's going on. Zura says, what has driven the deviants to terrorize the humans? So they're trying to figure that out. And Zura suddenly gets really angry and explodes, and she's like, Father, you'll ruin the furniture.
I love that.
Funny.
I love that so much. He Kirby crackles all over the game room. I guess this is a question for the fans out there, because I don't recall it myself. Has Zurus ever met Zeus? Because the Greek gods also exist in Marvel Comics. Because we've got Hercules, and we've got Hades, and we've got all the different gods. They are real in this world. So,
well, and I was thinking, so Zurus is one who didn't appear in the movie, and I'm guessing it's probably because MCU already had a God of Thunder, and they kind of filled that position. So it might be confusing to have two Gods of Thunder, even though the comics do.
The comics, the Gillen run that I keep mentioning, Zurus was off screen for a lot of that too, because he was like Odin frequently in the Thor comics. He was like, he's recovering, he's sleeping, he's he's out of commission for a while. So I do think that in the comics he's been sort of missing for a while, but then they brought him in again in that Gillen run. So yeah, I think maybe it's because they just wanted to go a different way with it. They wanted to have a different character in that position,
not have a supreme leader of the Eternals.
Maybe. But yeah, I'm just fascinated with the idea that Kirby wanted to tell this story that, you know, all our stories of gods are actually inspired by these alien settler colonizers from ancient times, and then they have this shared universe but also the gods are also real. We're doubling up on these characters.
All right, so Thena and Makari are gonna head out and look for Sersi, and they're in, again, some kind of ship that flies. And meanwhile, Crow and his men are facing off against the cops. I don't know, these cop uniforms look kind of outdated to me for 1976. It kind of brings to mind like the 40s or something.
This is a very Steve Ditko passage as well. Like the cops are incredibly heroic here, you know, and it feels a lot like the sort of Steve Ditko law is power sort of attitude here. Authority, good authority. So it's very odd because I wouldn't typically associate this with Kirby. But you know, we've seen him with New Gods also have detectives, like, are the one sane man willing to stand up to Darkseid kind of things.
Yeah, it's true. So into this face-off comes this kind of flaming javelin or arrow that we see on the next page. It was shot by Thena that throws everybody and sort of burns the flying green guys. One of them is screaming, "Yeah!" And she continues to shoot these arrows at them until one of them knocks the bow out of her hand. I guess we'll call it a bow. It's not, I guess, yeah, it's more or less that shape. But he knocks it out of her hand. So Makari shoots something at them that freezes them. And so then we have, like, it's raining snowmen, basically, on the next page.
I mean, this is frustrating reading this sequence because, you know, we keep moaning about the Eternals movie. Don't you kind of want to see this on the big screen? Like, this feels very cinematic, but then obviously the comparison would be immediately drawn to the Avengers movie, which also had a battle over New York with flying creatures and jet skis. True. So it probably would be too reminiscent of the Avengers movie, but this is dying for some sort of live action adaptation.
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking that too. Make a movie of this. You're right about the similarity to the Avengers movie, and that's probably why they wouldn't do it. But yeah, I would like to see the movie version of this.
Instead, we got what amounted to a very deadly family squabble. all these characters just turned to one another at the last minute, and I was like, "Oh, okay."
And then we get a scene at the Pentagon where they're looking at surveillance photos of not only the Celestials but also this dome that was built in the mountains, which they assume is the Space Devil's Earth base.
Yeah. Now, my question was, is this meant to be a tease for issue 7? Like, is this what set up the events of issue 7?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Because, yeah, we see this dome again, sort of more or less in person later. I think in issue 6, actually, when those agents first appear.
Okay.
And issue 6 is called Gods and Men at City College, which is kind of an amusing title.
I love it. But then it's, you know, you're like, what does this suggest? But it turns out to be a really important press conference. That's what this is setting up.
And so Makari and Athena are still flying around, and she's got kind of a javelin that she throws in amidst Crow and his men, and they've made this kind of Kirby crackle ring around them. And when the javelin comes in, then it kind of makes them all lose gravity, and all the Crow and his men are all kind of floating around, slamming into buildings and stuff.
Yeah, and like it's not too big of a jump from what Kirby's doing here in terms of the weaponry Athena is using is clearly meant to be sophisticated technology, like high-tech weapon. But then you read the mythology and you see all these stories about magical weapons that can do things which we would now associate with heat-seeking technology or generating electricity or an explosive force. And what I'm thinking of is in the Irish myth, there was the character of Cuchulainn, who was a hero and he was a demigod. And he had a spear, a magical spear, that once he threw it, it wouldn't stop until it hit the intended target. So it could go around corners. It would stop and then redirect itself. And you look at that now and go, oh yeah, that's like a missile, that's like a drone, that's like some sort of semi-automated weapon. But the myth makers, this is the imagination they had. And I kind of like the Kirby's taking that and saying, no, this is all just technology. That's just sophisticated technology.
Yeah. And actually, Crow is not floating around. He's still on the ground, and he's still facing off against the cops. And then Athena and Makari come in for a landing, and they're like, what, Crow, how are you still alive? You were alive at the time of the flood. And, he's not an eternal. He's a deviant. So how is he still alive? But he's saying the deviant strain is constantly changing. Some of our products are superior to others. So some of us can live forever, not all of us, I guess.
That's the random evolution idea. That's sort of being hinted at here, yeah.
I don't know if this was stated before, but it became clear to me that Crow's idea here is to make humans think that the Celestials are connected with this attack on New York, and so the humans will all get PO'd at the Celestials. I'm not sure what that would accomplish, because the Celestials are much more powerful than the humans. It's not like they're going to stop the Celestials.
I mean, he was alive at the time of the flood, so he's been witness to the previous wave of destruction that the Celestials have launched. So I think he knows that if humans are judged to be unworthy, and potentially what would make them unworthy is if they basically all stand up and go, hey, fuck you, they will get wiped out. And so that's what he's sort of agitating for. I think he's trying to trick humanity into being fearful. And we still have this idea at work here that there's a potential for Arashem to not judge humanity as being needed to be extinguished or eradicated. That's an idea that I think we've moved away from. More and more we have this idea of worthiness. There was a recent event all about this premise of the Celestials judging humanity, but it's almost like a foregone conclusion. Yeah, they're gonna purge the planet. It's happening. But it's not so much of a debate, even though I think that was kind of the gist of that last crossover. I felt I was like trying to redirect it back to that idea. As far as I'm aware, the Eternals has been more concerned with this is an inevitability. Humanity's going to get wiped out. This is we're screwed.
Yeah. So the cops are still standing there, and they're trying to figure out what all's going on. And the leader says to tell the commissioner the fighting's at an end and to prepare to deal with people that are out of this world. And we switch back to Sersi and Margot, who still have guns pointed at them.
Yeah, but Sersi's attitude has suddenly shifted. She's been very abrasive, let's say, and even slightly bemused by the fact that they're attempting to hold him hostage. Like, oh, okay.
Yeah, and she tweaks the nose of one of the deviants and screws up his gun, turns it into soft rubber. Makes another guy's gun have tentacles that attack his face.
And then she makes a Dale Carnegie joke, which again would be probably lost on people today.
How to improve your IQ and gain popularity.
That's a Dale Carnegie reference, right?
Sure.
That's How to Make Friends and Influence People riff. Yeah. Yeah, she's just being a little shit.
So, but then one of them tells her, fortune has turned in your favor. A truce has been arranged. You're to be freed and returned to the city. But Sersi's like, wait a minute, what happened to Icarus? So then they see that Icarus is in that capsule at the bottom of the ocean, and they go dig him back out, bring him back to the surface, open the capsule, take off the brain mine. And then Icarus almost attacks one of the guys. It's like, wait, there's a truce. And then Makari and Thena show up. So everybody's together here.
And Kor's with them as well.
Crow, right?
Sorry, you're right. I keep saying Crow. He's playing the sort of tempting devil, the devil on the mount with Christ. You know, like this is a wager about worthiness that he's going to stick around for. There's something. Yeah, he's an interesting antagonist here because I think when we first met him, he was just like another Kirby monster. Aha! I'll now kill people. Aha! But I love this idea of I am going to wage psychological warfare on the human species by pretending to be a devil. You know, he's an interesting character actually.
So Thena's talking about, you know, they need to unite all the species, the humans and Eternals and Deviants, to deal with the space gods peacefully. And Crow doesn't think that'll work. Thinks the humans will panic and resist the gods. Yeah,
and I think Margot is talking about bringing in another expert, Dr. Samuel Holden, to sort of be a sort of representative for this exchange. And Sersi's being like, oh, who's that? Like, oh, is he hot?
Yeah. Somebody that her dad knows, another professor.
I do love the idea of the general public stopping and listening to what an anthropologist has to say about anything. Yeah.
That would be a first, maybe.
It's been 4 years, and you've got people out there in the world who are still like spitting blood whenever they hear the name Fauci. So like, experts don't really have a lot of respect today.
No. So then we see Margot with Holden and kind of introducing the situation, and then we get a full page showing the Eternals that we've met so far, and Crow and Margot for some reason. It's nothing unusual about her, but this is actually the next scene, this page, as we see Sam Holden at a lectern behind them, speaking to an audience who we can just see some of their shadows on the floor in this panel.
This is the student body that he's presenting to.
This is at City College of the issue's title. And we see some of the students' faces on the next page, and reacting to this. They look like UFO pilots, and some of them are saying, "Oh, these must be the people who attacked us last week." Although they saying that surprisingly calmly, you would expect the pitchforks to come out, but
no. The previous comment, I get it. They were at the bottom of all that trouble last week. Trouble.
No, the city was on fire. That's all.
Is this Ireland? Sort of obliquely referred to mass death as trouble. A bit of trouble.
The troubles.
Bit of bother.
Spot of bother. Yeah. And so introducing how there are actually 3 different species of intelligent beings on Earth. and how the deviants can change their shape, and Crow gets rid of his horns, pushes them back into his head, and Icarus flies around the room, showing off his levitation ability. And then we get this one guy named Arnold Radish who introduces himself, and he's really skeptical, thinks it's all cheap gimmickry. And so Sersi turns his face into Ben Grimm's face, the Thing. And I thought, wow, we finally got a reference to the rest of the Marvel Universe.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
I was starting to think we were in a different universe altogether because, no other superheroes responded to Manhattan burning down.
Yeah, and again, you kind of wish we were. If Marvel had their own sort of Vertigo imprint for Kirby just to play around in, because you're right, it doesn't make a lot of sense. There would be all sorts of, but that's always been the issue with comic book shared universes. It's like, why weren't the Fantastic Four?
Where's Daredevil?
Oh, they were busy a couple of streets over.
Where it's also on fire.
Yeah, different fire.
So, of course, she only does that temporarily for 2 panels, and then he's back to normal. But just showing off that it's not a gimmick.
I do like that he's just contrary, though. I do like, where he's defending himself. She doesn't have to get personal. I'm entitled to my opinion. This idea of it's his opinion. He just wants to take a position. That's it. and she's, oh, well, I'll turn your face into rock.
And on the last page, here's where we see that dome in the mountains, in the Andes, in more or less real life. And we've got these 3 shield agents who encounter the celestial Gamemnon, who turns them to their atoms. We find out in the next issue. It's the end of this issue. They're just gone. Their equipment's lying on the ground, and they're not there anymore.
I have to say, we'll get through the next issue, but the way they behaved, they were like characters from the Venture Brothers cartoon show. They're the most unsympathetic shield agents I think I've seen in a long time. It's like when faced with incalculable odds and just these vast space aliens, their immediate response is, let's lob up. Anyway, we'll get to it, but their like insistence on aggression makes no sense. It's just like, you are an ant. What could you possibly do?
Yeah, they have a misunderstanding of the relative strength of themselves versus the giants. I mean, just the fact that they're giants, you'd think would mean something, but it doesn't seem to them.
I mean, that's the point of the story, which is just to illustrate that, humanity just can't get their heads around what they're being faced with. But I couldn't help myself. I couldn't help but judge them. I was like, oh, Jesus, what are you doing? Look, you're stuck there for 50 years. You might as well just get comfortable.
Coming up, Eternals 7 and 8, featuring 3 shield agents who can't accept the fact that giant space gods are stronger than they are, and the introduction of a couple of characters who've appeared as comic relief in recent comics. First, just a reminder that you can help this podcast by making your Amazon purchases via deconstructingcomics.com/Amazon. Follow the newly updated link there and be sure to bookmark it for future purchases. Our cut of the proceeds helps keep Deconstructing Comics afloat. We really appreciate your support.
Hey there, Bat fans. It's JB in New Orleans, your host of Bat 77, the 70s Batman podcast. I am a child of the 1970s and a lifelong Batman fan. And each month, I summarize and review a randomly picked Batman comic story published in the 1970s. From the pages of Detective Comics, Batman, The Brave and the Bold, and World's Finest. I also read from the letters pages and highlight all the memorable ads from the comics. On past episodes, I have also discussed Batman's appearances on Saturday morning television and the Power Records audio adventures. You can find the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you stream or download your favorite podcasts. Or you can find me on the web at bat77podcast.libsyn.com.
So the cover of issue 7, we see Ajax shouting, "Come back, you can't escape the space god." And the guys in the foreground are the S.H.I.E.L.D. agents, who we'll see again in this issue. And then there's a big Celestial behind them with his hand on the building where Ajax and the professor are. And this issue is called The Fourth Host.
Right, which actually explains the different hosts and what they represent. And, you were talking about all the different religious myth that were being drawn on by Kirby. But, I mean, when you talk about hosts, I also think of Jewish myth, too. Like, that's there's a consistent drawing on Old Testament Jewish mythology in Kirby's work. And that's being featured in here, too.
So we're back at the Inca site with Ajax and the Professor Damien. And of all things here, I had a lettering issue.
Okay, yeah.
And I understand why they do it, but it just looks weird. Okay. So in this scene, Professor Damien stammers, and he's stammering words that begin with the letter I. And the first I has serifs, and then after the hyphen, the second I doesn't have serifs. And it just looks weird. I mean, with lettering, I know, like, if an I is standing by itself, you're supposed to give it serifs. But it's supposed to be a repeated sound. And somehow the serifed I and the non-serifed I, sans serif I, it doesn't look like it's the same sound. I mean, it is, but you see what I mean? It's just like, is it possible? Since it's a repeated sound, it feels to me like you should have the same character for both instances of the sound. But
I was thinking of you earlier on today. I saw somebody complaining about, I think it was Bloodhunt. I'm getting a lot of digs in on Bloodhunt at the moment. My conversation with Pidge, we got into it on Bloodhunt. I don't know why I'm picking on Bloodhunt. I mean, I'm really into vampires. I should love this stuff. But somebody was complaining about the lettering where they use 2 hyphens to represent a M dash. Like a really old school, like when you used to have to use a typewriter, and the letter is still doing that, and it's saying, what do you can just create an M dash on the keyboard. You could just, there's a command for that. What are you doing? I thought of you.
Okay, so the Celestials are up to something weird here. So one of them has a ball at the end of a stick that he's putting into the equipment held by another Celestial. And Ajax says, "Look sharply at that ball of capsules at the end of the rod, Doctor." And Dr. Damien says, "You may as well tell me what they are. Their significance escapes me." And these capsules are life seeds. Those capsules are the stored atoms of living organisms. That's one thing I still don't understand about this comic. How can you break down something living into atoms and then put the atoms back together and the person or thing is still alive?
Isn't that what comic book science has been sort of wrestling with all these like giant and shrinking characters? Didn't they get excited about the idea that there is space between atoms, and if you remove the space between atoms, things shrink? That's what they're they're really hanging on to that concept. I think that's what it is.
And the Celestial Gamenon hands one of the capsules to Ajax, so the story can happen. That's the only reason I could think of for handing him the capsule, because that's what happens in this issue. And so Ajax takes it and presses the button on the capsule and sticks them in the microwave or something. And the 3 S.H.I.E.L.D. agents appear, who we saw at the end of the last issue, with the sound effect, Fwam.
And we get all their surnames so we know who they are.
Tyler, Parks, Stevenson, yes. And so they get out of the microwave, and they recognize Dr. Damien from Kingston University.
Now, what I love about this is they've just been, like, brought back to life, if you like. They've been returned to their normal selves. And Dr. Damien, up until this point, was like, what is this? What are you doing? Who is this? How is this happening? Oh, my goodness. And then when they actually emerge, he's just completely blasé, and he's inspecting some tablets and go, oh, hello.
Yeah, just continuing his research and like, oh, hi, people who are just reconstituted from atoms.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Yeah, whatever. It's all in the day's work at the moment, you know?
Yeah, what he acts very, his attitude here is that he knows much more about what's going on than they do. Like, almost like he's an Eternal.
I actually feel like he antagonized the situation. He made it worse. These guys, if these guys were just given some direct information quickly, maybe a lot of what followed would have been avoided.
Yeah, because they're totally with this aggressive man of action thing and pulling out the gun and saying, we're S.H.I.E.L.D. operatives, and what we learn here is vital to security. It's very serious business, Doc. And he says, of course it's serious business. Good Lord, but it's serious. But that pistol is not your ticket out of this place.
He's packing tobacco into his pipe as he says this. He's got a gun pulled on him, and he's like, oh, yeah, it's terribly serious. Oh, absolutely, very serious. He's like the, did you ever read The Day of the Triffids? Not The Day of the Triffids. The Midwich Cuckoos. The Midwich Cuckoos, which got made into Village of the Damned. But there's a character in that who's a scientist, and, he realizes that all the women in the town have given birth to aliens, alien children with psychic powers. And, like, half the time he's smashed on brandy. And just, this is, yes, it's a terrible thing. It's an invasion, don't you know? Yes, awful. Anyway, no, snifter. That's the attitude here.
So then Ajax comes in and says, are you fools bereft of your senses? And he levitates their guns up to the ceiling. And so puts them in a mood to listen, at least for a little while.
Yeah. They're being really obnoxious to them. And okay, and again, sorry, I don't mean to keep harping on this, but again, he comes in and he's yelling. We can tell because it's big font, are you fools bereft of your senses? And then there's Dr. Damien. Oh, welcome back, Ajax.
So what else is new?
Yeah.
Ajax totally, blowing up at S.H.I.E.L.D. agents. Meh, again.
I would be pissed off.
So they're trying to fill them in on what's happened and what happened in the past, and we, some flashback of prehistory when some apes were turned into humans and Eternals and deviants, and who the Celestials are and all this. And so the S.H.I.E.L.D. guys listen, and then Stevenson has something hidden in his hand. He says there's still an ace card to be played. And then he slugs Ajax, and one of the other guys holds back Dr. Damien, and Stevenson runs up the stairs and reveals that what's in his hand is this tiny tactical nuclear device. It's about the size of a car cigarette lighter.
It's very Starship Troopers. In the novel, they had like these miniature atom bombs as well. Sorry.
Okay. And he pitches it at the Celestial. This is Tefril. And Tefril just makes the nuclear device stand still in the air. He wraps his hand around it until it explodes. Waram. And Stevenson's so shocked that he doesn't even think to take cover from, a nuclear bomb going off.
Yep.
Apparently there's no radiation concern here. All right. Now explain to me what's happening on these next pages. There's lots of narration and lots of celestials.
I mean, Stevens just really, really screwed the pooch here. He's basically alerted the Celestials that humanity has nuclear weapons and they're prepared to use them. And it's like, oh, okay. All right, yeah, they're on the chopping block. like we've been just told about these different periods in history when they visited Earth, and they're either culling or allowing civilization to develop along a sort of approved course. And now it's like, oh yeah, no, we need to come back and leave this to Arishem to deal with. This is our assessment is complete. Yeah, they're lobbing atom bombs at us now. Yeah, okay, move on. Next planet. That's the gist, basically. Because they all commune. There's this moment where we see them all gathered together in a panel. It's this sense of all Celestials going, oh, okay, all right, yep.
Yeah, and they're sending some kind of message to, I guess it's a satellite.
Yeah, the alien spaceship that shields.
Cyclopean space home hovers with somber majesty. Inside it is the one above all. His word will set the task in motion. It will be his word that will end it. He sends down his message on a laser beam, 10 billion years evolved, seen once before by the ancient Earth. It was called the Ladder of Fire. So I guess Jacob's Ladder?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because we've got all the references to angels and hosts. But you've got this... I love this, because with the use of the adjective Cyclopean, you've got this hint of Lovecraft and cosmic horror happening here. But with the biblical allusions as well, you've got this blending of Jewish myth and famous anti-Semite Lovecraft. I'm sure Lovecraft would have hated this page. That makes me very happy.
Yeah, we didn't talk about the explanation of the hosts. So the first host was the Celestials who came and turned did the surgery that created humans and Eternals and Deviants. The second one was
basically
wrath and discipline.
The Hyperborean age gets wiped out by them. So that's Lemuria, Atlantis, where the Deviants had overdeveloped, like they become too sophisticated.
Right.
So they wipe them out.
Third host, inspection and cultivation. That was what happened with the Incas.
Incans, yeah, where you have this sort of, okay, we're now giving you a bit of a forceful nudge along the way we want you to go. And their worship is sort of acknowledged. And then we have the fourth host, which is what we're about to run into now.
And I guess the deal is judgment, right? Like,
yeah, judgment.
Is this working out or not?
We've given you all this time, This is also the plot of that terrible movie Prometheus. I'm pretty sure I've mentioned that before, but that's the gist of Prometheus as well. That these aliens were nudging us along in a path, and if we go too far down one way or another way, they might wipe us out.
Okay, so the SHIELD agents and the others are watching, and they're impressed. It's just incredible. They handle ABOBs like aspirin and talk in ways that make NASA look like a grade school. And why are they here? And the Celestials create like an explosion, like 10 hydrogen bombs going off at once, which doesn't kill anybody apparently, but it certainly creates a wind that blows the SHIELD agents. And then it's pointed out to them by Ajax that they have to stay here for 50 years. There's no way for them to get out. And of course, they're not happy to hear that at all. And so they try to get out anyway. And for their efforts, they get turned back into atoms. They're back in the capsule. And the last panel, we see Arishem, mightiest of the fourth host, and we see he's got some markings on his thumb that if he decides to put his thumb down, like the earth dies. It's the whole judgment bit.
Yeah, it's a great setup, and I really love the these shield agents kind of put their finger on the scale of judgment as well. They sort of accelerated the timeline, maybe, or maybe made the outcome of the 50-year judgment period more certain.
Yeah, endless time has produced endless failure. Thus, Arishem stands ready to do what he has always done. He is a planet killer. Engraved on his thumb is the formula for world destruction. If Earth fails, Earth dies.
Yeah, again, we've come back to this idea that we see a lot in New Gods, which is the notion of equations or formula that actually have an impact on reality, which is almost like magical sigils or divine word that's been captured in script. So again, it's kind of rifling on the Bible as well, the Old Testament magic sort of coming through here too. Enochian, I guess, if I was to reach for something to compare it to. But yeah, I find that really nice detail.
Okay, one more issue. Issue 8, War in the City of Toads, dated February 1977. Now, the cover blurb calls Crow Krona. And I don't think we've seen him called Krona anywhere else, certainly not within this issue.
So is he meant to be Kronos, the Titan? Is it now? Are we sort of riffing on the idea that
I don't know.
Kronos comes from crow?
Or you might have to be careful not to get coronavirus. No, wait, that was something else.
You went there.
All right. So, yeah, now we're in a completely different situation in this issue. We're not at the Inca site. We're not in flaming New York for the most part. We're in the Deviants area at the beginning here. And, well, we also find out in this issue that Crow and Thena were lovers. Kind of a surprise. So, yeah, Crow is turning out to be a little deeper than we might have thought, I think. There's more to him than there might have seemed initially.
Yeah, and it's something that I've seen other writers explore more directly. Again, it's something that, like, because Crow was such a non-entity in the film, that would have been interesting. And then Thena in the film, the whole storyline there was that she was basically experiencing the eternal version of senility, which was kind of weird. Why are you doing this? But the deviant reject that we meet in the opening of this issue, we've seen this before. We've seen this with New Gods as well, where you had the one member of the sort of ant-like species who was hideous, and he hid his face underneath a mask. So Kirby's just reintroducing these concepts. Right, this time I'm going to get it finished.
The Marvel version, DC version, yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, of course, the hideous person to us looks very handsome. The reject, they call him. They don't give his name, but I realized by the end of this issue what his name is. This is Ransack. And at the end of this issue, he's going into a fight with Carcass. Now, the reason I recognize these characters, they've been kind of recurring characters in Rainbow Rowell's sensational She-Hulk just recently, playing very different roles from what they are in this issue. They're more like for comedy. And they're buddies in She-Hulk.
You recommend She-Hulk? You think you should check it out?
Well, yeah, it's been good. Although I hear it's ending.
It's finishing up. Yeah,
finishing up. But yeah, it's been good. You know, they even rebooted it once, and it didn't help the sales, I guess. But yeah, I thought it was worth reading. But so I was interested here to see. Okay, this is the origin of Ransack and Carcass, the first appearance of them. And I mean, to show how obscure this has gotten today, like the whole Eternals thing. So they are deviants. And on iFanboy, they were talking about the She-Hulk issue. I don't know that they've read any Eternals. I mean, I was in the same boat until recently. But they were mistakenly calling them Inhumans.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Something a little more familiar with, but yeah, no, deviants.
The Inhumans also have a weird relationship to the Eternals. Like, there is actually a connection in a strange way, but I mean, they're more connected to the Kree. That's the whole point of the Inhumans. The Inhumans are like Kree experiments on humans, who were previously experimented on by the Celestials to create humans and Eternals, and so it's all really messy. And I can appreciate people getting confused because they're all about, oh yeah, in ancient times this alien race visited Earth and decided to experiment with us and created this new species. The fact that it's happened like 3 or 4 times, different characters,
right? Different writers and
different concepts, but it's the same basic idea. Yeah.
Okay, so Ransack, the reject, the only way he can prove that he's worthy to live is to be in combat. And so they have to find an opponent who can defeat him because I guess they don't want him to be worthy of survival. So then comes the scene with Crow and Thena about like, oh yeah, they were an item before, but she says the gulf between us is too wide. Won't work between them. So that's that page, and then we're back with Dr. Samuel Holden and the Eternals, the other Eternals that we've met, Icarus and Sersi and so forth. And yeah, Sersi has a sense of humor, and so the Doctor has busts showing deviant, human, and eternal, and she puts hats on them. There's a chef hat on the deviant, a cowboy hat on the eternal. That hat on the human, I'm not sure how to characterize that, but it's a big, tall hat.
Is it a pilgrim hat?
Would have a buckle on the front of it if it were a pilgrim hat.
I do love the busts because you've got the deviant who looks like a swamp person. That's very unflattering. You've got the eternal, and it's basically Icarus. So it's very flattering to Icarus. And then you've got the human. The human looks like the illustration from the Joy of Sex manual from the 1970s.
Yeah, he's got a beard, and Margot thinks it's cute.
Yeah.
And so Dr. Holden is all excited about this discovery still. But as he's raving about it, everybody else leaves except for Sersi. And I don't know, I think Sersi wants to put the moves on him. But what she does is she magically creates a whole big band and asks him to dance.
Out of his furniture. Yeah. She's got. It's definitely an interesting approach.
Yeah, so Crow and Thena have been out on the balcony there, and they have jumped in their ship and taken off, and Icarus and Margot and Makari have also left. So, and then we see where Crow and Thena have gone. Their ship they're gone underwater again, and they're looking. Is this these are the ruins of Lemuria?
I believe so. Yeah, which we previously saw at the beginning of the book. When we first met the deviants, Lemuria or Atlantis. I can't recall which, but I thought it was Lemuria.
Yeah, well, I think that the deviants had lived in Lemuria.
Oh yes, it is Lemuria. Yep.
I think it was mentioned in the first or second issue. And he's hoping it can be rebuilt, but she says it's doomed to suffer the fate of this one if you dream of resisting the space gods. So then where do they go here?
He's taking her on a tour of Lemuria. I think he's showing her.
Oh yeah, the main canal of the new Lemuria. We have arrived at the royal pier. They're given a ceremonial welcome.
And then she meets sort of a member of the deviant species who they're all disgusted by because he's a failure. He's a throwback Again, this is where I don't want to get too much into the race science stuff, but it's here. It's definitely here. Like it's yeah.
Yeah, well, and there's something called purity time where they gather up all of the deviants who they considered not to have worked out and have them all killed. And we see a glass truck go by, or like a truck with huge windows. You can see them all in there.
Yeah. They're practicing they're practicing their own version of eugenics on a mass scale, and the sort of death camp vehicle as well. Like it's clearly sort of once again we've got the specter of the Holocaust coming into Kirby's writing here, and it's very upsetting. It's horrible.
Yeah, and Thena's really upset about it, and any interest she had in Crow is gone now, having seen this. So meanwhile, Ransack is being fitted to battle the opponent that they found, who hasn't been named yet. Well, and of course, Ransack is still just the reject at this point. But then he starts beating up the guys who were trying to outfit him here. What's this device he's got?
It's like a flame torch or something, yeah.
It goes pow, pow, so... But yeah, it looks like flame coming out of it. Yeah.
He has a boomstick. He is Bruce Campbell.
So they're talking about Carcass. They bring up Carcass for the first time. That's going to be his opponent, the ultimate reject. Now, there's a bunch of vibration. The whole structure is vibrating from something, and it's Carcass that's causing this.
Have you noticed the deviant who is clearly of a Granny Goodness type? Like there's a sort of the big hair and everything. Even the jowls are similar to Granny Goodness. She's a member of the court again.
Okay, I guess I hadn't noticed her.
Red face, big bouffant green hair. I was getting Granny Goodness vibes. Yeah.
There she is. Thena and Crow go to see the great Toad, T-O-D-E, but yeah, he looks kind of Toad-like, T-O-A-D.
Merp. Because I just think of Toad Hall in his motor car.
Okay. And so they see the reject, and Carcass comes in breaking down a door, and so the battle is going to start at the end of the issue. And Thena says, fools, you'll destroy the one object of value in this ugly domain. Talking about the reject. So it's because he's hot? Is that why?
It's pretty much that he's hot. Yeah.
The object of value. She wants to date him.
But also, I mean, again, like if we're getting into the eugenics discussion, which I insist we're not. She's moved to intercede on his behalf, but not the bus full of creatures we saw getting murdered in the previous page,
Yeah, true. She's just angry there, but here she's stepping in.
Yeah, whatever. Okay, folks.
On that note, we finished these 4 issues, so... Yay, eugenics now. No. Okay, so, we'll be back before too terribly long with 4 more issues, I guess. Or maybe fewer. This went on longer than I expected it to. So, we might...
always with Kirby, there's more to say than you think. There's more there to talk about.
Yeah, well, and when we were doing the DC stuff, too, we started out with more issues, and we kept reducing how many we talked about, and we still talked for an hour.
Yeah, there's always more going on under the hood with Kirby.
The Eternals is published by Marvel. Thanks to our patrons for supporting Deconstructing Comics and our other podcasts. To join them, go to patreon.com/deconcomics. Patrons get access to podcasts about the early years of The Amazing Spider-Man, Jim Starlin's run on Captain Marvel, and more. Be sure to check out our Facebook group. A number of other people, including Kumar, share interesting links there. You can find the link to discussion group, (Facebook), at deconstructingcomics.com, as well as our Facebook page and our X and YouTube accounts. From our site, you can also follow the link to shop at Amazon to support the show. Find links to subscribe to the podcast, leave a comment on any episode on our site, or leave us a voicemail. Or you can write to us at mail@deconstructingcomics.com. Are you making a comic? Send it to us and we'll do a Critiquing Comics episode about it. Our theme is by J.B. Anderton. This summer I'm going to be distracted with several other projects, so for the next month or two we'll be presenting some flashback episodes, plus an episode or two of our former Patreon show, Tim Catches Up with the MCU, and here and there a new episode as well. Last month when Emmet interviewed graphic novelist Pidge, she mentioned his 2018 interview with Hicksville creator Dylan Horrocks. Next week we'll re-present that interview. So until then, this is Tim, and thanks for listening to Deconstructing Comics.